I never thought a normal Tuesday could turn into a memory that would haunt me forever. It started like any other day. I got up late, grabbed a granola bar, and sprinted to school, dodging bikes and slow-moving cars. I remember thinking that the weather was unusually gloomy for April. Overcast skies that seemed to suffocate the streetlights, like the sun had decided not to bother showing up that morning. By the time I made it to class, I was out of breath, sweaty, and slightly embarrassed, but the teacher just waved me in without a word. Our school had been talking about a lockdown drill for weeks. Posters were everywhere, on classroom doors, the hallways, even the bathroom mirrors. They warned us about active intruder scenarios, emergency codes, and how to hide. Honestly, I never paid much attention. Those drills were always boring and half-hearted. But that Tuesday, I wish I had listened. By mid-morning, we were in the middle of a standard history lesson. Mr. Carter, our teacher, was droning on about the Industrial Revolution, but my mind kept wandering. Something about the classroom felt off. I can't explain it. Maybe it was the way the sunlight through the windows was distorted, like the shadows of the blinds stretched too long, too dark, crawling up the walls like black fingers. I shook my head and tried to focus on my notebook, but then I heard it, a faint scratching. At first I thought it was my pen dragging across the paper, but no. This was coming from the corner of the room near the old storage closet. I glanced over. The closet was just a small wooden thing in the corner, painted the same pale yellow as the walls. But the scratching didn't sound like wood. It sounded like nails on a chalkboard, slow and deliberate. I froze. Nobody else seemed to notice. My classmates were scribbling away, oblivious. I leaned a little closer to the door, heart hammering. Then it stopped. Dead silence, except for Mr. Carter's monotone voice. Shaking off the unease, I wrote it off as a rat or maybe a loose hinge. But the feeling didn't leave. I couldn't stop staring at that closet. The shadows around it seemed darker than the rest of the room, almost moving. Later that morning, the announcement came. Lockdown. This is not a drill. Lock all doors and stay away from windows. The words echoed through the speaker system, slightly distorted, like someone had tampered with the volume. Panic spread quickly. Teachers rushed to lock doors. Students ducked under tables. I felt my stomach churn. Normally, a drill meant we'd just sit quietly for 10 minutes. This felt different, urgent. Mr. Carter instructed us to stay low. He told us not to open the closet. But I couldn't help it. Something in me drew me toward it. My classmates were shaking and whispering, but I moved closer to the corner, almost hypnotized. The closet door creaked when I touched it, and my hands went clammy. I could hear that same scratching sound again, only louder, faster, more insistent. "Stop it," I whispered, my voice trembling. And then the door opened on its own, slowly, not pushed, not pulled, just opened. Inside, the closet was empty, or so it seemed. But the shadows inside, they didn't belong to the room. They shifted unnaturally, like smoke-forming shapes that shouldn't exist. And then I saw them, eyes, hundreds of tiny red eyes staring from the darkness. I stumbled back, tripping over a chair. My classmates turned toward the noise. I tried to explain, but the words came out jumbled. The lights flickered, and in that moment, everything changed. The scratching intensified, echoing off the walls. I swear I could hear whispers, soft and urgent. "Get out. Get out." The next moments are a blur. We stayed under our desks for what felt like hours. Occasionally, we could hear footsteps in the hall, dragging along the tiles in a way that made my teeth ache. The announcements came again, but this time the voice was distorted, almost guttural. It was saying our names. All of our names. Then it got worse. I heard my name whispered behind me, so close I could feel my ear hairs stand on end. I turned quickly, but no one was there. The shadows in the corner seemed to stretch further into the room, and the red eyes blinked. I wanted to scream, but my voice was gone. My throat was dry, my body frozen. Somewhere in the chaos, the door to the classroom, our supposedly locked sanctuary, opened. And it wasn't Mr. Carter. I don't know how I know this, but it wasn't him. It moved wrong, too fast, too fluidly, like it didn't have bones. My classmates didn't see it at first. They were too busy trying to call their parents on their phones, but the shadows noticed. They seemed to recoil slightly, then merge back into the darkness of the closet. Time lost meaning. Seconds felt like hours. Then just as suddenly as it began, the intruder, or whatever it was gone. The doors had been secured again, the hallway silent. The announcements returned to normal, calm and rehearsed. Lockdown over. Resume classes. Everyone looked at me strangely. I wanted to scream at them, tell them what I had seen, but the words felt trapped in my chest. My classmates laughed nervously, trying to shake off the fear. Mr. Carter kept teaching as if nothing had happened, even gesturing toward the closet like it was just a regular piece of furniture. I didn't speak for the rest of the day. At home, I tried to research what I'd seen, but every article about school lockdowns, intruders, or unexplained phenomena came up empty. Nobody else reported seeing the red eyes or hearing the whispers. I even asked my friends. They all said the lockdown had been normal, just a routine drill. But I know what I saw. I know the scratches weren't from a rat. I know the shadows weren't natural. I know the closet watched me. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those red eyes staring from the corner of my bedroom. And then I realized the shadows weren't confined to the closet. They were everywhere, lurking in corners, behind doors, under beds. The whispers continued, soft but urgent. Get out. Get out. I tried to tell my parents, but they dismissed it as stress or imagination. I tried talking to a school counselor, but even she shrugged and said it was likely a student prank. But I know the truth. I can feel it following me even now, years later. The closet was never just a closet. It was a gateway, and whatever came out that day, I don't think it ever left. Sometimes when I walk past old school buildings, I feel those eyes on me again. I hear that scratching, and I know deep down that the classroom is still waiting, watching, patient. I haven't gone back. I never will. And I never tell anyone the full story because I fear they won't believe me. And worse, I fear it might find me again if I speak too loudly. Because some things in this world are better left unseen. I never considered myself easily scared. I've always been the type to laugh at horror movies, shrug off creepy stories, and roll my eyes at ghost rumors. But after what happened that Thursday, I've realized that fear isn't about what you see. It's about what refuses to let you leave. That day started like any other. I arrived at school early because I had a science lab that morning. My backpack was heavy, my shoes scuffed from running in the rain, and I remember thinking the hallways smelled like wet carpet and cleaning solution, a combination that always made me feel slightly sick. My friends waved at me from the lockers, and I waved back. Everything was normal. Or at least it seemed normal. I made my way to my classroom, which was at the far end of the building. I'd never paid much attention to the architecture, but that morning, I noticed something I'd never seen before. The hall seemed longer than usual. Maybe it was the way the lights flickered, casting uneven shadows along the floor tiles, but it felt wrong. I shook it off and entered the classroom. Lab experiments, Bunsen burners, and messy countertops were everywhere. My friends were already setting up, and I joined them. For a while, everything was fine. We joked, mixed chemicals, and waited for the teacher to arrive. Then the announcement came. Lockdown. Lock all doors. Stay away from windows. This is not a drill. At first, it was like every other drill. We ducked under tables, locked the door, and tried to stay calm. But this time, the calm never came. The lights dimmed slightly, and the air felt thicker, like the oxygen itself had grown heavier. I was the first one to notice it. The hallway outside our classroom didn't look right. I peeked through the small window in the door, expecting to see the empty hallway, maybe a janitor or two. But instead, it stretched, longer than it should have been. The fluorescent light stretching into darkness that made no sense. The far end of the hall wasn't visible, it just disappeared. I blinked, thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me. I pinched myself. Nothing changed. The hallway wasn't normal. It moved. Not physically, but it felt alive. Then I heard it. A low, dragging noise like something heavy scraping along the tiles. I couldn't tell if it was coming from the far end of the hallway or behind me. My friends were huddled together, whispering, but I couldn't get them to notice it. My heart was hammering in my chest. I pressed myself against the wall and listened. The sound grew louder, accompanied by faint whispers. At first, I thought it was students outside, but the voices were wrong. Distorted, almost layered, like multiple people speaking in the same tone at once. Then the lights flickered violently, plunging the hallway into darkness for a moment before they came back on. And that's when I saw it. A figure, tall and thin, standing at the far end of the hallway. It didn't move like a normal person. Its limbs were too long, bending in ways that should have been impossible. And its face? I still can't describe it. Not because I don't remember, but because my brain refuses to comprehend it. All I can recall are two hollow sockets glowing dim red, and a mouth stretched impossibly wide, like it had been cut open with a blade and sewn back wrong. I froze. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to move. The whispers grew louder, and the figure began gliding down the hallway, silent, its movements unnatural like water sliding over tiles. My teacher, Mrs. Latham, appeared beside me, snapping me out of my paralysis. "Everyone stay calm," she yelled, her voice trembling, but when she looked out the window, her face went pale. I could see the reflection of the hallway behind her, and it was wrong. The hallway behind us, in the reflection, wasn't the same as the hallway outside the door. It was darker, infinite, stretching into shadows. Then the announcement system crackled again, but the voice wasn't the calm, rehearsed tone of the usual drills. This voice was guttural, low, almost whispering through the speakers. "Don't leave. Don't leave." Panic set in. Some students began crying. Others tried to call their parents. I followed Mrs. Latham's instructions as best as I could, but the hallway was calling me. I don't know why, but I felt drawn to it, like something inside me wanted to step out into that impossible corridor. Before I knew it, I was moving. Slowly, cautiously toward the door. My friends screamed for me to stay put, but I couldn't stop. The hallway stretched endlessly, but I took step after step. The tiles beneath my feet seemed to ripple as if the building itself was alive. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Not mine, but heavier, slower, dragging along the floor. I turned, and the figure was there. Its head cocked to one side, and it moved in a way that made no sense. My stomach turned. I ran, but the hallway never ended. Doors that should have led to classrooms opened into nothingness. Lockers became twisted shapes, their metal warped, reflecting images that weren't real, faces screaming silently, limbs bending the wrong way. I tried to turn back, but the classroom door had vanished. Only the infinite hall remained. I was screaming now, but the sound was swallowed by the corridor. My lungs burned. My legs were raw, but I couldn't stop. The figure was always behind me, gliding silently, its eyes never leaving me. The whispers were now deafening, overlapping in a chaotic symphony of voices. "You can't leave. You can't leave. You can't leave." Hours or maybe minutes passed. Time became meaningless. The lights flickered, the walls pulsed, and the hallway stretched on endlessly. My mind was unraveling. I thought I would die there, trapped in that corridor forever, running from something I couldn't defeat. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the hallway ended. I was back in the classroom. The lights were normal, the floors were solid, and my classmates were sitting quietly under the tables, whispering nervously. Mrs. Latham was staring at the floor, shaking. No one said anything. The announcement system returned to normal. Lockdown over. Resume classes. I tried to tell them what happened, but they all said the same thing. The hallway was normal, nothing unusual, no figure, no whispers. It was like everyone else had been shielded from it. Like it had only been for me. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the hallway stretching endlessly, the figure gliding silently, waiting. I can still feel it behind me, waiting for the moment I try to step out of the boundaries of reality again. I never told anyone, not fully. My friends think I'm exaggerating, but I know what I saw. I know the hallway is still there, hidden within the school, stretching somewhere between dimensions. And I know that if I ever go back, it will find me, because some places don't want you to leave. I've never told anyone this story in full. Not my parents, not my friends, not even counselors. Every time I consider speaking about it, I feel that same weight pressing on my chest, the same dread that kept me frozen that day. But it needs to be said because whatever happened in that school, whatever it was, still follows me. It started like any other Monday. I was late, as usual, running across the wet playground and juggling a backpack that seemed too heavy for my 16-year-old frame. The morning air was crisp, almost too sharp, and the sky was gray, layered with clouds that never fully parted. I arrived at school out of breath, sweating, and hoping that first period study hall would be uneventful. It was, at least at first. My study hall was in the old wing of the school, the part that no one really liked. The paint was peeling, the lockers were dented and rusting, and the ceiling tiles were permanently water-stained. Most students avoided it because it had a reputation: creaky floors, weird drafts, and strange noises that couldn't be explained. I never believed in ghosts or anything supernatural, so I laughed it off. Until that Monday. We were sitting quietly when the first sound came. A faint whisper. Soft, almost imperceptible, like someone was speaking right behind my ear. But when I turned, the hall was empty. I glanced around. My classmates were focused on their books, completely oblivious. I shook my head, telling myself it was imagination. Then it got louder. "Get out." I froze, my heart thumped in my chest. It wasn't coming from anywhere in particular. It seemed to reverberate through the walls themselves. I tried to convince myself it was a student whispering behind a locker, but my eyes scanned the room. Empty. A few minutes later, the announcement came. "Lockdown. Lock all doors. Stay away from windows." This is not a drill. By this point, my stomach was churning. I've been through drills before, but something felt different, ominous, real. The teacher rushed to secure the door, and we all ducked under the tables, trying to stay calm. But I couldn't stop staring at the walls. That's when I noticed it. The walls seemed alive, slightly pulsating, subtle ripples moving across the paint as if something behind them was breathing. And then I heard it again. "Get out. You shouldn't be here." This time it wasn't soft. It was insistent, urgent. It sounded like multiple voices speaking at once, layered together in a way that made my teeth ache. The sound seemed to come from inside the walls, traveling along the pipes and wires curling around the ceiling. I clutched my head, trying to block it out, but the whispers persisted. I couldn't take it. I stood, careful not to draw attention from the teacher, and pressed my ear against the wall. What I heard next made me wish I'd stayed under the table. Voices. Hundreds of them, screaming, whispering, pleading, and then a single distinct voice, low, guttural, dripping with menace. "We see you. We've always seen you." I stumbled back, my chest tight, eyes wide. My friends hadn't noticed, or maybe they had, but they were frozen, silent. I don't know how long I stayed pressed against the wall listening, but the building began to change. The air grew colder, thick with an almost metallic smell. Shadows stretched along the corners, moving independently of any light source. The ceiling tiles above started vibrating. Faint at first, then violently, like something beneath them was trying to break through. And then the voice changed. It started speaking my name. Every word drawn out, deliberate. "Emily, Emily, Emily." I wasn't Emily, but the voice didn't care. My mind screamed that I needed to get out, and I bolted toward the door. Only, it wasn't there. The classroom door had vanished, replaced by a solid wall that wasn't there before. Panic set in fully. I was trapped. I turned to the windows, hoping for escape. But outside was wrong too. The playground looked normal at first glance, but the swings twisted unnaturally, bending in ways they shouldn't. The trees swayed, though there was no wind. And the shadows of the other students. They weren't human. They elongated, melted into the walls and floor, crawling toward me. I ran across the room, slamming against the walls, trying to find another exit. That's when I saw it. A crack, a tiny fissure along the corner of the wall, pulsating with a faint red light. The whispers came from it, louder now, overwhelming. "Come, join us, stay, forever." I didn't think. I grabbed a chair and threw it at the crack. The wall didn't break, but the sound stopped. Silence. Complete silence, so loud in my ears it made me dizzy. I leaned against the wall, shivering, trying to catch my breath, and then I heard laughter, not from my classmates, not from the hallway. It came from the walls themselves. High-pitched, distorted, echoing from every surface surrounding me. I stumbled back and hit the corner of the room. My vision blurred. Suddenly, the classroom returned to normal. The walls stopped pulsating. The windows looked regular again. The door reappeared. The lights flickered and stabilized. My teacher was crouched by her desk, whispering to herself. My classmates looked around, confused but unharmed. No one mentioned the walls, the voices, or the fissure. The announcement system returned to calm. Lockdown over. Resume classes. I left school that day, shaken, silent. My friends tried to ask what happened, but I couldn't speak. How could I explain something that no one else saw? Something that may have only been targeting me? That night at home, I tried to sleep. I thought the ordeal was over. But when I closed my eyes, the whispers returned. Not faint this time, but clear, direct, coming from the walls of my own bedroom. "We see you. Emily, we've always seen you." I don't know why it called me Emily. I don't know why it targeted me. But I know it's still there, watching, waiting. I moved houses, changed schools, tried to ignore it, but I can't. The walls talk. They never stop. And sometimes when the wind blows just right, I can hear them laughing, whispering, always saying, "You can't leave. We've always seen you." I can't escape it. And I fear if I ever tell someone fully, it will find a way to reach them too. Some things behind walls aren't just shadows or echoes. They're aware. They're patient. And they don't forgive.